Okay, welcome again, everyone. I'm Rafael Moura. I'm the Advancement Director at EAB, and we're happy to start our webinar, EAB Reunites, the road ahead. We're going to talk a little bit about blended learning and our next steps. A few things before we start. Have in mind that we have simultaneous translation. Nós temos tradução simultânea disponível. Se você for no menu aí abaixo da sua tela, tem um ícone de globo que você pode passar que nós teremos Mônica que está fazendo essa tradução simultânea. Então, se você preferir escutar em português, por favor, fique à vontade. I was explaining to our Brazilian community that we have a translator available, and if you have any questions, we have an icon below your screen, the Q&A icon, that you can send any questions that you have throughout the webinar. We had time to receive a lot of questions from you guys, so we based ourselves in those questions to create this presentation. So we're confident that we're going to go through all your doubts tonight. So before we start, I would like to introduce Annette, our board president. She has a few words for you before we start with Leslie. Annette, please.
Okay. Hello. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? It's excellent. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here and join you tonight. I'm a parent myself at the school, and I'd first like to take the opportunity to say a few very warm words of welcome to Leslie. As you will have read, Leslie is our new interim head of school. Alan asked the board to go into early retirement, which we understood given his existing preconditions and health issues. So we were extremely glad that Leslie was able to step in and take over the leadership of our school. And we trust that we found a perfect interim head of school for our school, and are extremely grateful for her to keep steering us through these extremely difficult times. All of us, you, me, the teachers, the staff, everybody around the globe, we have extremely difficult months behind us. And I do hope that you and your loved ones are safe, that you keep doing everything for keeping yourself safe. That I know this requires a lot of patience. We experience it every day here at home with our kids. One of our kids actually just moved out and is going to study back home in Germany, beginning her uni life, which is a very, very new feature in our lives now. But it's also worrying for us, and I'm sure it's the same for you with loved ones all over the world. And we need to be patient, practice patience. We need to continue functioning for everybody, continue functioning as moms and dads, as in our work roles, wherever we are. We need to keep our families together, and obviously we also need to try and keep schooling our kids and assisting our kids and getting the schooling we envisage for them. And so that's what we're here about tonight. These are extremely difficult questions, and the board in our last meeting last Friday, we deliberated about these questions, whether we should actually now move into blended learning. For a very long time, we usually consult with the epidemiologists, we consult with lawyers, we consult with the international schools here in Brasilia, we consult with international schools all over the world, just to try to get the very best of solutions adapted to the situation as possible here in Brasilia. You will have many, many questions, and I know that. And that's totally correct, that we need to give answers to these questions. And I'm very confident that our leadership team will give you many, many answers tonight. If we don't have the answers right away, we'll try and incorporate them as much in our next decision-making steps, because that's a very important message as well. This is going to be an ongoing process. We're going to revisit our decisions as we've done for the last couple of months, over and over again, adapting to the situation as it is at the moment, and possibly changing them again. This is necessary because we try to deliver the very best in services, education that we can give as a EAB to you and your kids. So I'm really looking forward to all your questions. I'm really looking forward to all the answers from the leadership team. And I hope you're going to go home tonight and feel reassured about the way forward. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Annette. It's Leslie Tate here, everyone. Thank you, Annette, for those kind words and introduction, and also an explanation of the decision that the board and leadership team have recently made. We are heading into a staggered, slow start to blended learning. But as Annette says, we need to remain flexible and agile and watch what's going on around us and watch what's happening around the rest of the world so that we can adapt as we move on. We have a plan, but we need to be agile with that plan. Okay, I'm going to take you through some slides and talk about the plan and what it looks like. And as Rafael said, the chat, the Q&A is there for you to ask questions. The rest of the leadership team are all here and they may be able to respond to your questions as we go along. If not, as Rafa said, we can come back to those questions later. I would have to say I would much rather be standing in our wonderful auditorium talking to you tonight. That would be so much better than what this is, but we have what we have. And so once again, welcome and thank you very, very much, everyone, for turning up tonight and for your support of EAB, your children, our staff, everyone. So let's go to the first slide. So as we said, we are moving into blended learning. And what is blended learning? It really is exactly as the word describes. It's a blend between distance learning that we've got to know since March. We've all been in that distance learning world. A blend between that and some on-campus face-to-face learning. And so it's a way of combining the two, I guess, as a transition, as a step forward into maybe school as we used to know it. And I'm confident that we'll eventually get there. This crisis, this difficult time will pass and we'll be in face-to-face learning in full time. But we need to have this transition period where we combine the distance and the face-to-face together. So that's exactly what blended learning is. At EAB, we have our version of blended learning is the students having 1 week of on-campus learning. It's actually 4 days rather than 5, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but 1 week, and then following up with 1 week of distance learning. So it's a week on, week off type of structure. And the reason for that is because we want to restrict the number of students on campus at any one time, down to 50% of our whole school roll. And we also want to make sure that everybody is safe and everybody is able to physically distance. So that's the 1 week on, 1 week off type of structure. Does my child have to go to the campus? No, the answer is no. We really believe in this particular time that parents, families, students, everybody needs to have a choice. So you can choose for your child to do exactly what I just described as the week on, week off type of structure, or you can choose to keep your child at home and have what we're calling home learning during the week where classmates may be at school. And then the alternate week, everybody is on distance learning again. And I'll just describe what that really looks like. So I want you to imagine, so we have a class of, say, second graders, and some of those children their families have chosen to come to school. So they come into school in the usual way, and they are in one class with their teacher and the assistant. The school has invested in some very sophisticated technology in the form of cameras and microphones, so that the whole teaching session or the learning session is actually being filmed. So your child in real time is watching the same lesson that the students who are on campus are also receiving. So it's a in real time view into the classroom. The microphones are very sophisticated as well, so that they can your child who might choose to be at home can interact with the teacher and classmates and vice versa, and can see everything really that everybody who's in the classroom is actually doing and seeing. Same curriculum, same assignments, same assessments, everything will be exactly the same. So that's what we're calling home learning. So you will have a choice as a family. Then it's definitely your right to choose, and we will be able to cater for both choices. Your first option is yes, I can send my child to school for the on-campus week or 4 days and then a week of distance, or no, I would prefer my child to be at home viewing exactly and participating exactly in the same learning that everybody else is getting. Health and safety measures will EAB put into place? What health and safety measures will EAB put in place? So like all schools around the world, by law and regulation, but also by choice, we have a whole range of measures that we have been working on, and to make sure that we're mitigating as much risk of this virus as possible. Let's take a look at them, Hafa. So the first measure is about the mandatory use of masks for everyone. So for all students, staff, anyone who is on campus, they must have a mask on at all times, unless eating. And I'll talk about that later. EAB will be providing your child with 3 masks and will actually be making available to lower school students shields as well. The shields are not mandatory, but can be used if some closer work is required between teacher and student or between students. The mandatory use of masks, as I said, we will be providing those for your children. We will ask you, if you're choosing to send your child on campus, that you send them on the very first day with their own mask on, and we will distribute the school masks on that very first day. We will also provide 2 Ziploc bags so that the students can use those, one to have 1 mask and basically to store their masks in when they're not being used. So masks and shields will be provided by the school. Our faculty also have all of those things provided by us, along with some other preventative gear that they may wish to use, gloves and an apron, for instance, if the situation pertains to that. Temperature taking will actually happen at EAB every day. So during a break time, your child's temperature will be taken and records kept, just to make sure that they are healthy and that they're fine. And we will also be running a system where we'll most probably be asking you to take your child's temperature, and we're going to use a particular app that families will have on their phones and we will have at school, where you can say each day, yes, my child's temperature has been taken, there are no COVID cases in our household, and so that child is ready to come to school. And this will greatly ease the entranceway or the coming into school procedures that we're going to put into place. So, but more information about that app will come out to families when the time comes, when it's time for your child in their particular grade to begin to come to school. Health screening, as I say, so that's going to be on mums and dads just to say, yes, we are confident that our child is healthy and that there are no positive cases in the household. We'll actually be asking families before each grade arrives to sign a waiver document to say that you understand what's required of you as an EAB family, that you are going to be careful in your practices at home as well as at school, and that you understand that that's an important part of being part of our community. So that information, that waiver document has been looked at by various people around in our community, our lawyers, etc., just to make sure we're not asking something we shouldn't be, and it's been all approved. So that information will come out soon. Hand sanitizing, you know, like we have everywhere in the world now, is going to be obviously required and very important. And we have many, many ways of distributing the sanitizer and making sure that the students understand what to do and how to do it. Even our little 3- and 4-year-olds will be hand sanitizing at all times. In fact, we're going to start tomorrow publishing a little video particularly for students to look at. It's actually Mr. Derek and Miss Terry Lynn talking about mask wearing and hand sanitizing, and we're wanting particularly our younger students to start managing that process, particularly the mask wearing for themselves. We will be hiring some extra cleaning staff just to make sure that the campus can be cleaned, that various areas, particularly bathrooms, are cleaned all the time, and that the cleaning staff will be working in very small pods so that they're only interacting with small groups of either students or other teaching staff. I just have to click there so I can see my screen. As you probably know, we're going to be grouping our students together in small groups, well, in class groups, and restricting the interaction that those groups will have with each other. Now, this is particularly important in the lower school, of course. So the students will come in, they'll only be working with their section, with their class, their teacher and their assistant. They will not be interacting with anybody else. So it's a group of 20, we call it a bubble. They stay in their bubble all day and then they leave again. That's not quite as easy as that in the upper school, in the middle and high school, because the same groups are not always doing the same subjects, but we believe that we can contain the students across their grade. So they will be mixing with each other in a grade, but not specifically just in a class. Outdoor, well-ventilated spaces is really, really important, and having students in places where there's a lot of airflow, that they're outside, that they can be, where they're not confined by an interior classroom, is something that we really want to see as much as we possibly can. And for that reason, we've been covering some outdoor spaces at school, putting some temporary covers up, which I was there yesterday and they actually look amazing. And so that I think is going to work well, actually having classes outside. The campus is going to be closed to all visitors. So sorry, mums and dads, you won't be able to come on the campus at any time. And we won't be having contractors or anybody else visiting the campus, unless it's an emergency, of course. So the campus is completely closed. Physical distancing is really important to us, and keeping students within that barrier or that distance of 2 meters from each other, from the teacher, from the teaching assistant is what we're aiming for. That is quite challenging, especially with very young children. And so I'd have to say it's the combination of physical distancing, keeping small groups together, and mask wearing. It's that combination that we feel is at best a mitigation factor. So we may not always be within the we may be closer than the 2 meters, but as long as we've got those other things happening, we believe that that's going to be fine. Okay, Hafa. What will physical distancing look like? So as I've just said, start students and staff at a 2 meter distance wherever possible. So we don't want the 2 meter rule to restrict good teaching and learning practices. We still want teachers to be working with small groups of students or working on a one-to-one. And so sometimes that will mean that they do need to be closer, but we believe as long as people, as I said, are masked and it's a small group that we're containing, we think that that's going to be fine. The classroom furniture probably will look a little bit differently to what you are used to our classrooms looking like at EAB. Everybody will sit at a table rather than, particularly in the lower school, they often sit on the rug. So it'll be at tables, and we have been able to position our classroom furniture already, so things are well spaced out. We have opened up some of the classrooms so that it's 2 classroom spaces with 1 class inside that space. So there's plenty of room for students and teachers to interact. In the upper school, there are group tables that we're used to working. The students usually would be sitting around a group table of, say, 4 students at the same table. If that is the case, we have now invested in some dividers, I can't remember what they're made of actually, but so they're clear dividers that actually provide like a screen between where the students are going to be sitting so that they're not closely working with each other. Arrival and departure times. So we obviously to keep students apart and to keep that physical distancing, we don't want a whole lot of students all arriving at the same time or all leaving at the same time. So that we are going to organise the day and the schedules around different times. So once all of lower school actually start being on the campus at one time, so for instance, grades 1, 3 and 5, once we get those guys all coming in, we'll start staggering the arrival times in the mornings, and you can see the times. It'll be oldest in the lower school down to youngest. And we will be communicating well ahead of time so that as you're dropping off your students, your own children, you will know what time's expected of you. The middle and high school schedule is going to be a little different than it currently is, or that it would be with full face-to-face, in that it will run from 8:30 to 1 p.m. And it's a condensed schedule starting at 8:30, condensed classes. And the middle and high school, it's probably a good time for me to say now, they will leave at 1 p.m. and go home for lunch. So lunch is a problematic time when we've got a lot of students eating at the same time. So our older upper school students are going to go home at 1 o'clock for lunch, and then they will have distance learning office hours in the afternoon for the rest of their learning time. For the lower school and ECP, departure times will also be staggered. So we will be letting you know what times those are as well. But lower school and ECP will work through to 3 p.m. In the usual way. And then there'll be a slight staggering of departure grade by grade as we go. Next slide. So as I just alluded to, lunch will not be served at school because of the concern about contamination with too many students eating at the same time. So ECP and lower school students will have lunch at school, but they need to bring lunch from home. And I know that that will sound a little scary to some parents, but it's so that they can actually eat their lunch in their bubble, in their small group that they're already in. And we are going to provide microwaves in all learning spaces so that students can be assisted with heating lunch if that's what you would want them to do. But you might be just thinking about what could I actually send each day that they can manage easily depending on their age. So eat together in the classroom space, or actually preferably in the outside covered spaces in a staggered way. And then that's why I've also said that middle school and high school won't be eating lunch at school. They will leave the campus at 1 p.m. and go home for lunch and then continue with their learning program from home. We won't be able to have lunch deliveries either, I'm afraid. So some of our staff are like, oh my goodness. So lunch or food cannot be delivered to the school, picked up and delivered to your child. So lunch, you know, I understand that this is going to be challenging, but lunch will need to come in a lunch box for lower school students and be able to be managed in that way. Athletics and activities. So at this point, as we begin our transition into blended learning, athletics and activities will continue in distance learning the way they currently are set up. So there won't be any extracurricular activities on the campus. However, I would have to say, if, you know, and this is the part about being agile and flexible, as time goes on and we're still in blended learning, possibly we could start to introduce athletics and activities on the campus in very small contained groups. But we will just have to see how the numbers work out and what happens with that. We won't also be having any form of school activity where it's a big group together. So unfortunately, assemblies and such activities like that won't be occurring while we're on campus. Cleaning and sanitizing of the campus is extremely important, and making sure that we can actually manage this while your children are on campus is important. Classrooms will be cleaned every 3 hours. So when there's a break, lower school, when the children are eating their lunch outside, the cleaners who will be working in small pods, as I said, will go in and clean that space. Just a general clean wiping of surfaces, etc., will happen at that point. Classrooms, all classrooms will be deep cleaned every week. And this is one of the reasons that it's a 4-day program of on campus, because on the Friday, those rooms need to be extremely really cleaned, and we need that to happen on that day. So that's important because, for instance, that's the changeover time. So high school will finish their on-campus week. There will be a deep cleaning of those spaces, and then middle school will come in the next week. So, and the same within lower school, the grades will change over. So it's important that we are able to do that deep clean. Bathrooms will be cleaned after each visit. And that is very challenging for us, but we believe it's possible with a number of extra cleaning staff who are waiting basically beside bathrooms ready to go. We will also restrict the numbers in each bathroom at any one time. So if you can imagine, there might be 4 stalls in a bathroom. 2 of those stalls will be blocked off, cannot be used, and the alternate 2 can be used. We'll have signage outside the bathrooms letting students know how many students are allowed, or how many are allowed to be in the bathroom at any one time. And there'll be a queue system 2 meters apart when you wait to make use of the bathroom. We will ask our students to help with some routine cleaning tasks, particularly in the upper school, because they will be moving from space to space. They'll be expected to once they've finished in a space, wipe down the chair that they've been sitting on, the desk that they've been working on, and move off to the next space, and similarly when they arrive in their new place. So as students, we want to have some good buy-in and empower our students to be looking after themselves and each other as well. The notification of positive COVID cases. And we've listened and watched cases around, or international schools in particular, around the world. And we are very aware that we will probably get positive COVID cases in our school community during blended learning. It is extremely important, in fact, almost mandatory, that families must notify the school if there is a positive COVID case in their household. That we have a system now where there's a notification form. It's on the front page of the school's website, and the link is published each week in the bulletin, and we just need to make it the most common place that anyone can visit, so you know where to go if you do have a case in your household. Teachers will also be able to record any cases that they hear of, and that will be investigated. We now have 3 trained nurses available on our campus. We have our 2 original nurses that we've had for quite some time, and now our wellness coordinator, Ms. Teeters, is also a registered nurse. So they are the team responsible for track and tracing of positive COVID cases in the school. Just move to the next slide, Haffa. And so, as I said, that immediate notification of any positive cases within the community is extremely, extremely important, in fact, mandatory. If a positive case is reported and it has been a case on campus, it's a student or a staff member, then we have to have an immediate deep cleaning of the spaces that that person has been using. That happens automatically. And then there is an automatic 14-day self-quarantining of anyone who's had more than 15 minutes exposure to that particular person who is now positive. And that could be a bubble of students from the lower school, it could be a grade in the upper school, it could be a group of staff, it would be anybody that's had more than 15 minutes exposure to the actual person with who is positive. The school and our 3 nurses are responsible for this, but we will also, the leadership team will also be supporting this. We'll communicate immediately with families of those who have been exposed, if that was to be the case, so that you know exactly what's happening, and that your child may be required to go instantly on distance learning during a period of 14 consecutive days. There is a possibility that we will have to return to distance learning. We can be in blended learning, but it could happen, and this is where what I mean when I talk about being agile and flexible. Pods or bubbles of students may have to return to distance learning because of what I've just described, or even our whole school may have to return to distance learning. So I just need EAB parents to understand that even though we're saying that this is a move to blended learning and eventually, hopefully, a full face-to-face structure for EAB, there is the likelihood or the chance that we could move back to distance learning full-time as well. And on the next slide, just to refresh your memory, so the board and the leadership team have established these 4 aspects of these 4 criteria for making a decision to move away from distance learning into blended learning. And it's pleasing to see that the number of cases, particularly for number 1 and number 2 there, that the number of new cases in the federal district are actually decreasing, and that's wonderful to see. But we're very aware as well that the number of new cases per population in the Federal District remains high. So we are aware of that. We're seeking advice about that from our epidemiologist and our COVID committee, and just tracking that carefully as well. And that's really why we wanted to make sure that parents have the choice. Because we know the numbers are high, we do have some decline, which is a great thing, and parents may take that on board and say, yes, I feel comfortable about my child returning. Or you may take all that information on board and say, I am not comfortable with this situation on the campus just yet, and that is perfectly fine as well. So that choice is really important. And I want you to know that watching the numbers and all of them, and measuring this criteria as it's written here, plus also the actual numbers of new cases, is very much part of the board and leadership team's work. So what's going to happen next? Tomorrow in the bulletin, we're going to issue you a survey as mums and dads and ask you to respond, giving us an indication of what your choice will be for each of your children. Sorry, you'll have to fill out the survey for each child. We're just trying to work out to make sure that we actually get your choice for each individual child. This is an indication, so please don't worry if you think, I don't really know yet, I need to see. It's okay. We will give you another survey the week prior to your child actually beginning, or your child's grade coming on campus. But right now we need some sort of numbers so that we can see what our planning needs to look like. So we're going to ask you to fill in that survey tomorrow. We will be publishing next week some specific what we're calling a specific reopening manual with clear instructions and details. And hopefully it will have every possible detail, some of the things I've talked about tonight, but more detail per grade and per division. We're also going to begin publishing a lot of videos explaining each of our procedures. We're going to be explaining them to you as parents, but also to our students. So some of the videos will be made with the student audience in mind, particularly our younger children, so that they can see what the campus is going to look like, and we'll have some sort of expectation about what's going to happen if you choose for them to come. In fact, we're actually going to ask some of our upper school students to make some of these videos for us so that it's student made for a student audience. We think that's going to be a good thing. The plan is set, as I said, but EAB will remain agile in its implementation as new information and data becomes available. We need to make sure that you are clear on that although there's a plan and although we're moving forward, the plan could change at any stage according to what's going on within the pandemic. We think that it's a time that the fabulously famous EAB community culture can come together, that we can actually do this for each other, that we can think about our own behaviours at home and when we come to school, and that we can think of those not just for our own sake, our own health and safety, but for the health and safety of our whole community. Because the more that happens, the more the pandemic will be under control in the Federal District, and the more likely it is that this blended learning can be a success at our school. So it really is a time for us to work together, to be one, and see what we can do, and that I believe we can do this together. So that's all I've got to say this evening. I hope that it has answered some of your questions, and I haven't been watching the chat, but I'm sure the leadership team have been, and hopefully are answering, have been answering as we go. everybody knows that, I hope you do, that you can reach out to me via my email address or via the EAB Reunites email address as well, if you'd like to ask questions. And we will, we make a commitment to reply to people when they email in. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for coming and listening to us. As Annette said at the beginning, we understand that this is a challenging time. It's a challenging time all around the world. It's a challenging time for families, for teachers, for leadership people, for absolutely everyone. But we need to work together, as I say, to move forward and get through. So once again, thank you so much and have a very nice evening. Boa noite.
Thank you, Leslie. Thanks everyone for being part of this webinar. Just remember that if you have any questions about this webinar was recorded. We can share the video later on. We'll share this webinar with our community. And if you have any questions, send an email to eabreunites@eabdf.br. Thanks for joining us.